Alright, so it's almost 3:30 in the morning, and we just got back from seeing the Hunger Games premiere. We went to the midnight premiere, we stood in line for 3 hours, and we weren't the first people in line. There was probably at least 50 people in front of us.
Oh, I'd say more. I'd say somewhere near 80 or 90 probably.
But anyways, it was a long night, but it was well worth the wait. And
our night started at about 4 or 5 when, because we're crazy, we decided that we would go dressed up as people from the Capitol.
And it turned out really well. There was a group of about 8 of us, at least 6 of us dressed up.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't actually the only people dressed up. There was one girl who was really dressed up like Effie. She had like the blue hair.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, she had like a blue. It was an excellent costume. Quite outshined us.
Oh,
but
yeah. Me with my like purple extensions.
And I was kind of had like geisha makeup and like gothic dressed. So I think we have a picture that we can show you. But anyways, so we spent a while in line as they kind of like packed us in, and they said we were only going to be let in at like 11:30 to sit down. The movie started at 12, but they ended up letting us in at about 11.
It was 11.
Yeah, which was beautiful. It was much needed. So we actually got decent seats and everything. And so we sat down.
Got the snacks.
Yeah. So waited around for about another hour. And all of a sudden those credits started playing.
And it's the Twilight Breaking Dawn trailer.
Of course it was. Because they're so similar.
Oh, definitely. Gotta get me some Edward Cullen.
Yes. Gotta get you some Edward Cullen.
Okay, so Hunger Games. Where do we want to start?
What bugged you?
What bugged me? We're going to start off right off the bat with what bugged me.
You know you're going to get into it in like 2 seconds anyway, so...
A lot of things, actually. I'm not saying that the movie was a bad movie. It was a good movie. It did exactly what it could do with what it had. But, being the freak perfectionist that I am, this movie abused the Handycam. It abused it left, right, and center. And, you know, it made sense what they were trying to do. You know, they're trying to capture this in real time and make it realistic and, you know, have, like, shaky camera and getting into people's faces. But you're sitting there in the audience and you're starting to get a little bit, okay, can we stop the camera?
Let's focus on something, please.
I need to see something. Oh, okay, no more. No, I want, and then, you know, it would cut to, like, they did the 2 guys, I always forget their names, it's been forever since I read the book, blue hair and the Caesar and his sidekick who looked really familiar. They never gave him a name.
No.
But he was just there to, you know, like, bounce off of Caesar and everything. And, you know, they'd cut to them and they'd be sitting at a desk and, you know, narrating. And you'd be like, oh, thank God.
Something still, not moving, thank you.
I can rest my eyes, okay.
And then it would go back to the...
When it got to the Capitol, it wasn't as bad. And in the games, yeah, it kind of did it a little bit, but...
That was understandable,
yeah.
And it was done nicer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in the beginning it was like, Katniss is hunting this deer, and it's like, shaky thing of her feet, and then Katniss, and then Katniss, and then Katniss drawing her bow, and then the deer, and then Katniss, and it was ridiculous, and it was like, nothing's happening, but they're cutting so fast, and it's like, why are you jerking me around?
For the first 15 minutes, I thought, oh God, I am not gonna like this movie.
But then it disappeared, and it was better.
Yeah, it got much better. Casting was well done. Katniss was well done.
I mean, she was kind of, she had that almost like understated kind of, I'm always kind of staring and blinking, but you know what, it works, and she doesn't do it all the time, and I mean, it's kind of part of Katniss's character, because I think she just kind of goes through the whole book shell-shocked, but, I mean, it worked, and I did appreciate it. Jennifer Lawrence's acting, so that was well done.
Let's think before we go into the actual...
Peeta.
Yes.
I liked him, actually. I wasn't sure, but I think he did a good job, and he played Sweet really well. There was just this moment at one point when they're in the cave, and, you know, he's like, you gotta use some medicine on yourself too, and he just takes this, like, long time to just, like, put the medicine on her forehead, and he just made it so sweet and just so heartbreaking, and you know they gotta kill each other, and you're just like, oh.
See, I flip-flopped with him. Like, when we first were introduced to him, I was just like, eh.
Yeah.
My highlight for him was definitely his interview with Caesar, because I think they captured that perfectly, how it was described in the book, how he was very easy, and, you know, just the camera loved him, and the people loved him, and Caesar loved him, and the whole smelling each other was just, it was amazing, but...
the movie had a lot of, like, enough comic relief, too, so it wasn't always serious. And I mean, the book had that comic relief too, especially with like Effie and Haymitch, and
I think the movie brought the comic relief out more than the book did. Like, it was just like, okay, we're gonna be funny now, but not as in, okay, don't be funny, and we're gonna try and be funny to lighten the mood because this sucks. It felt natural, but I felt that the movie did it more than the book. The book, it was kind of there, but it wasn't central to the plot.
Yeah, it was more understated. And but if you were to read it out loud, okay, you're going, oh yeah, right, it's there, it is, because Effie she was brilliant, I guess. Like, it was just like at just the right moment she'd be like, manners, or that's mahogany, or just stupid things, or she's nattering on in the background.
I like how when they're driving, she's nattering on, and they just kind of like mute her out, and so you can see she's nattering, and you can kind of get into Katniss's head, which was what I was worried about, because the book is told from Katniss's perspective, and how are they gonna like give her narration and her view on things, and without having the whole movie like first person shooter with like a little voice in your head going, oh, this is what I'm thinking, and this is this, and da.
And like, just at certain moments you almost feel what she's feeling. Like, at one point something explodes, and she's disoriented, so the camera's kind of like doing that woozy thing, and then you hear this ringing in your ear and you can't hear anything else. And that was well done, because, like, that's obviously what she's feeling, and then you're getting that sense too, and it's not beating you over the head with it. That was very well done. I was impressed with that.
They did use the fact that they couldn't do all of first person very well with how they showed the stuff that was going on that Katniss wouldn't have known. Like the game master and the riots in Rue's district after Rue is killed, and Katniss does the thing.
Yeah. They also gave you information that if you hadn't read the book, clever. Yeah,
they did that so well. I would have been happier if the movie was like, if it just switched to that kind of almost like cutting back to them being like, oh, and and oh, look what Katniss is doing, and make it seem more like a sporting event. Just because it would... okay,
I think they would have made... that would have worked, but I think they would have had to up the gore and, like, just the horror to just...
Director's cut.
Yeah. But, yeah. So, but they did it really well. So it's like, you know, she runs into the Tracker Jacker bees, and then it cuts to Flickerman going, oh, so those I think are Tracker Jacker bees. And for those of you at home who don't know what Tracker bees are... you know, they're oh my gosh.
Horrible pain, horrible hallucination, they're like
they're just,
they're modified wasps, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's like showing you in the background, like, kind of like an anatomy thing, and that was very well done, and it felt very realistic, and
I just love that. There's a wasp. Cut it down. Katniss is in the tree looking up and looking at Rue, and Rue's like motioning and everything.
It was just, she was so cute.
Oh my.
That little girl was adorable.
Oh man.
It was just big eyes.
There was too much cute going on there. Because going in and having read the book, and you know the moment that you see her that
she's gonna die.
She's gonna die, and you're just up the cute factor of how trusting and wide-eyed she is.
And I mean, she was smart in the book. Like, she was certainly not like a liability at all. It just was bad luck that she happened to get caught, right? So, I mean, and the one problem I did have was that they didn't seem to build up the relationships. Like, especially with Rue, I felt like it was like, oh, you helped me, I love you, and then you're gone, and then she's dead, and you feel sad.
In the book, she's around for a little bit longer, and you get, well, I guess because we can't really get into Katniss's head and make the connection between Rue and her sister, how Rue becomes like a surrogate for Prim. In the games.
But, I mean, they could have had, like, a few more relationship-building scenes, like, I don't know, I'm helping you climb this, or, you know, look, there's some berries over there, grab the... I don't know, they could have just added in a few more things to make it feel like they actually had spent some time together, but...
What I thought was really cool was, when, after Rue's been speared, how they did her death scene, how you actually got her point of view.
Yeah.
It was weird, and it was morbid, and it was just depressing, and you felt the tears, but, like, seeing her last stuff. It was really well done, and really clever.
What else? Oh, I just had something, and it's gone. So, how'd you feel about the mutts?
I went into this movie thinking that there were two things that were going to terrify me, because I thought that they wouldn't be able to do much gore, because they wanted to go for a lower rating, so I was looking for a way that they were going to cover up the gore, and of course they did in the cameras, but we'll talk about that later. So, I went into it being like, the Tracker Jackers and the mutts are going to terrify me, and that's going to be the part that I can't watch. And then they showed the game controller people with, like, you know, being like, okay, we're going to release this in here, and it looked like an oversized bulldog.
It really did.
And I was kind of upset, but when they do a really good job of building up them coming in with just all of the noises, and all of a sudden, bam, PETA's, like, down.
Yeah, that was shocking. I kind of went like, oh my god.
I had flashbacks to my basilisk in the Chamber of Secret days. That scene still gets me. What I wasn't happy about was they were just giant dogs. And I mean, in the book, they're going on about the eyes, and, you know, oh, are they did they do something to the bodies? Did they take the eyes?
Yeah, but that's...
Guilt and Katniss being kind of shell-shocked. It just became, like, the final...
Yeah, it was like it was like the punch when she was down. But I will say that would be very hard to convey, like, story-wise, because he was like, oh, Suzanne Collins was, like, focusing on the eyes, and oh my god, there's Rue's eyes, and there's Foxface's hair, and, like, Foxface's eyes. And so, I mean, you clearly didn't get... it would be very hard to make the association between these things, and...
Well, with that, because in the book, they go into, like, they go into that more near the beginning, how they talk about, oh, you know, they made the mockingbird that isn't the Mockingjay, but whatever. The original
mutt was.
And they had, like, the dogs and other weird stuff, and the Tracker Jackers. And so you knew that the Capitol was capable of creating these. So in the back of your mind, and you see the Tracker Jackers in the game, and you're like, okay. So it kind of makes that connection that they're still doing this. So when the mutts come in, you're just like, okay, those are mutated, whatever. And then when Katniss starts seeing stuff, you're like, okay. Like, if they had made the eyes more human...
That would have been a good start.
I mean, even if it had just shown, like, more human eyes on the mutts and not said anything else, then
they could have even put the collars with the numbers, because they had that.
Yeah, it would have been almost like a better reference. Mm-hmm. So the people who had read the book would have been like, oh.
Yeah, that's true. They could have put it in that way.
That's how I would have handled it.
I just wish they didn't... I wish they didn't look so much like normal dogs. Like, they could have had, like, long, pointy ears, and, like, they were supposed to have, like, super wicked claws. And so they could have made the dogs look more mutation-like, I guess. More contrived.
It's bad that when I saw them, I was like... Oh no, this is going to be another poodle werewolf incident.
It wasn't.
Not that they looked like poodles, but in the third Harry Potter werewolf looks like a giant hairless poodle. Just it killed it for me. And so these just look like giant bulldogs, and I'm like, okay, this is what I was coming in to see, and
yeah. I mean, I guess the thing was you were always going through the movie like, oh, this is coming up next. I wonder how they're going to do this. There's like just so much you wanted to see out of the movie, and you're curious to know how they did. And overall, I'd say they did well, but you just, I find I spent the whole movie going, oh, and now the Tracker Jackers are coming up. Oh, and there's Rue, and oh God, I know she's gonna die soon. I wonder how they're gonna do that. And just you really were like looking, especially if you read the book, for how things were done. The one thing I really loved, I know you kind of had a problem with, was her costume at the beginning where she was lit on fire. I thought it was well done. I mean, like, you could see, like, they looked like actual flames coming off of her. I wish she had a cape, because I think she was supposed to have a cape.
Yeah, she was supposed to be, the dress was supposed to be, like,
long and flowy.
And, like, when I saw it, like, it wasn't, the dress itself was supposed
to,
she wasn't wearing a dress, but
the
made it into a dress.
Yeah.
And the way they did it in the movie, it was almost like they had fire coming off of them behind.
Yeah.
And, like, it looked cool, but I wanted to see, like, the full, because, that's how I pictured it, the full, like, fire everywhere, and just...
I was happy with the effect. I guess I wasn't too picky about that, but I thought, and she looked badass, like, let's put it that way. She looked like, yeah, we gotta kill her off before she gets me. They both looked really good, and the hand-holding was done
well, too.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the Game Master's beard? The Game Master's beard was by far the most fantastic thing to look at.
Oh, I just want to meet the person who designed that and be like, so, how
did you get, what made you think to, have, like, the swirls and...
Oh, it was cool.
Oh, he was interesting because, you didn't really get to know him in the book. But in the movie, because you can move with perspectives, you get to see this guy and how, he's in it for the entertainment value. Like, he is totally detached from everything, and he's just like, okay, I need to make a good show.
And so he's just like, I'm gonna fuck with you here, and, branch fall here, and fireball, go!
And, like, he was good at what he did, and that's what made it so weird and crazy, because, he had probably in the most horrible twisted thing.
Yeah, she turned to me in the middle of the movie.
Ever. Because he's standing there in the middle of the room and he's surrounded by all these people who are like...
pushing buttons
and they have these touch screens and dragging stuff
You're like,
around.
I want that computer.
Just like, oh yeah, okay, we want to put a message up in the sky, make the message drag and drop. It was so cool. And he's just sitting there and, oh, sir, Katniss is getting away from the group. She's like 2 miles away from the edge of the thing. Well, we should turn her around. And like, they set the whole thing afire like they do in the book. And he's just standing there and he's like, okay, tree. I want a tree falling there and fireball.
Or yeah, she's going too far to the left. Tree fall.
And you're just like, it's like an art to you.
Well, I'm sure it was, but they portrayed that very well.
Like, it was very, very clear that everything in the games is people doing things to people.
And there's this one point where Katniss is sitting in the tree and you hear this clicking sound, and then she, like, turns and looks at this knot, and then it, like, kind of zooms into the knot and then out again, and you can see that it's a camera.
I thought it was going to be Tracker Jackers.
Yeah, she was like, oh my god. I was like, no, it's not.
But he was cool, and his story arc was cool, and I loved his little interludes with Snow.
Yeah.
And
I like the irony at the end with
where was so well done.
They had like a bowl with the nightshade or nightlock.
Nightlock, I think.
Yeah, nightlock. And like he gets locked in this room and he just looks in the bowl and you're like, oh shit. And that was your cue to kill yourself.
Snow, like, at one point in one of the little interludes, Snow's like, I like you, be careful. And you're like, you're gonna die. You're gonna die.
You're like, yeah, I'm sorry, dude.
I was kind of let down with President Snow.
I sat through the movie going, God, he reminds me of Dumbledore. I'm waiting for him to give you a friendly hug and just kind of...
When I was reading the books, because I keep going back to the books, I pictured President Snow as the architect from The Matrix. That is like,
yeah,
that is how
sense.
I saw him, completely like that.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Just like completely detached and just willing to do, like, well, not detached, but detached from emotions, just wanting to do anything to
just
keep himself
like being
in power.
manipulative. Yeah.
And like they got the rose thing down, but he just seemed too nice.
He seemed too grandfatherly.
And it wasn't like he was too nice to cover up that he wasn't nice at all. It was there was no level, and it wasn't like you felt uncomfortable because he was being too nice.
He was just nice.
He was just nice, and you're like,
But I know you're kind of doing something unethical, but, you know, you seem like a good guy.
Except his hope speech. His hope speech was good. How, you know, give them a little bit of hope, but don't give them too much, because too much hope's dangerous.
But that wasn't creepy. That was more like, this is how it works.
Yeah, but
Just
it was
make
showing
sure you
off.
don't-
It was showing off his kind of manipulative side.
Yeah,
a
but
little
it
It was
wasn't
the
as
closest
creepy.
you're gonna
Yeah,
get.
yeah. So I was disappointed with him too, very much so. Hopefully they up his creep factor in the next one.
Well, they're gonna have to if they're gonna go into more more detail about his past and how he rose to power and everything.
Yeah. But so he's one thing that I think really needed to be fixed. Cinna.
Cinna's my favorite character.
Oh, he was so cute.
He did, he was done really well. I wish they had shown more of him. His relationship with Katniss was shown
Very nicely.
yeah, because he's one of the few people that Katniss actually really trusts. So they were able to get that across really, really well. I don't know what else to say about Cinna, because he doesn't really do much.
No, I mean, he doesn't do
He's
a whole,
there.
Yeah, he doesn't do a whole lot in the book either. Portia didn't look the way I expected at all. She was she looked very much like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, I pictured her more elegant, but she just kind of had this weird thing going on. And
Frizzy. Everybody had frizzy hair.
Well, it was all wigs, but
Yeah.
I mean, I pictured some kind of elegant beehive.
Mhm.
I'm picturing Portia from what is it, Julius Caesar? For some reason the name just brings up that whole Greek.
Yeah, Roman.
Yeah,
I can see that.
because Portia is a character.
Yeah,
in
it's Caesar's
Shakespeare.
wife.
Brutus's wife.
I think it's Caesar.
It's someone's wife in Shakespeare in Rome. So
I think it's Caesar's wife, because she's be careful, Ides of March. The soothsayer just said that.
Yeah.
And Caesar's like, ah.
So, yeah. Anyways, I pictured her more Greek style, elegant, beehive drape.
Well, she didn't even talk.
No, she didn't have anything. But that's nitpicking. Gale. Gale was very broody. Gale was appropriate.
He did this horrible thing. And it was so horrible.
Our whole theater was very responsive. They'd go, "Aww," or they'd kind of laugh, or they'd be like,
Okay, so what they would do is they would have a cute scene with Katniss and Peeta. It would be they'd kiss, or he'd say something and she'd say something, and then you'd get a shot of Gale. He's kneading bread, and he's just and then, they'd do something cute, and Gale would just be like, and it just became Gale, just every shot of Gale was
it was just him being like, "Fucking guy, I'm a girl."
And so you never felt good of Peeta. Oh, say hello to a cat. You never felt good about Peeta and Katniss, because you'd have that moment of adorableness, and then you'd feel
ignore it.
Then you would feel like, poor Gale, you poor man.
I mean, in the book, she was always going, "Okay, I'm doing this, and Gale's probably doing this," right?
Yeah, they didn't really. Well, I guess that's another fact that they couldn't get into her head.
But that's what they were trying to show.
Yeah.
I mean, with that cutting back, because in the book she's like, "Oh, I'm kissing him." Gale's probably like, so.
So this is the very end of the movie, and it kind of ties into this. I don't like where they cut it.
No.
where they ended it.
It was too hopeful.
It was too hopeful because she's supposed to. It's supposed to end with their relationship being very ambiguous because Katniss isn't sure whether she actually has any feelings for Peeta or if it was all in the games, and it's the whole question of what's in the games and what's reality because Katniss is supposed to be kind of messed up because of that. And so it ends with all hopeful smiling and waving, and you completely miss that whole...
They take each other's hands over?
Yeah, he takes her hand again.
And then the last shot is actually of President Snow doing something. It was
President Snow walking out of the game room, watching on the screen.
Yeah.
Everything happening in
But
District
since he's
12.
been Grandpa the whole time, it's not as scary as
yeah.
it could have been. So that was kind of part of it. But, yeah, so the ending was but I mean, you have the whole next movie to fix it, but overall I think that was mostly well done.
I mean, we've seen much, much, much worse.
They could have Twilighted it.
Or Aragon did.
Oh, that would have been bad.
Oh, yeah. Not that I'm not going to say anything about Aragon.
There's one more thing I wanted to talk about. Prim and her mother were well done. Gale was moody and broody and...
Looked like his brother in real life.
Oh.
Am I the only one who, his brother plays Thor? Chris Hemsworth. And he has the same kind of jaw, and I just kept seeing
his brother
in that.
But yeah, overall it was well done. I'd say I was very impressed with their sound mixing and the way they use sound. I wouldn't be surprised if that got nominated for an Oscar. I've heard people complain about the music, and I didn't really have a problem.
My biggest problem was the camera work. It felt like they were trying to use it to do something, and then they just kind of went overboard. But other than that, costuming and actors and scripting and it was well done. It was well done.
What they added was necessary. What they took away was pretty... Oh, the last thing I wanted to talk about was Peeta's leg. We had a little bit of a discussion about how Peeta didn't lose his leg at the end.
I totally didn't realize that.
Yeah. And somebody was saying, anyways, that, yeah, I mean, it kind of takes away from some characterization that's there. But ultimately, it's not very necessary to the plot, so I was kind of okay with them taking that out. And I mean, but it was just like a psychological thing for Katniss, too, like kind of like a guilt factor.
Yeah, like, I think the one thing that they weren't able to handle very well was the trauma. The trauma in the games, of being in the games and, being on high alert was there. But the trauma of after wasn't really shown. Like, Hamish, he was just this drunk dude who kind of was fatherly. And, they played up the whole fatherly role between him and Katniss. But he's supposed to be a lot more complicated than that, I would say, because he's the only survivor, and he's, for how many years, watched these kids die because there's nothing he can really do about it to save them. And then he gets Katniss, and he sees Katniss.
He sees himself
in Katniss because Katniss is so stubborn, and she talks back to him. And on the other hand, he has Peeta, who is going to do anything to keep Katniss alive, and so he has this different dynamic that he's never really had before. And clearly his drinking is because of what happened in the game.
And just the guilt of, like, living and watching tributes die year after year after year, right?
Peeta's leg would, like...
kind of play into that. But in the end, it's not overly necessary.
It really depends, for me, how they start the second one. if Katniss isn't, like, she has to, the rest of her characterization for the next 2 books is highly dependent on how she comes out of the first one, because going into the second Hunger Games that she goes to in the second book, she needs to be, because she needs to be freaked out. Her relationship with everybody else going into the games is highly dependent on her being like, okay, I don't want to know these people because I'm going to be in there and we're going to all be killing each other.
Yeah.
And even that builds on in the third book how she has to put everything behind her, and her emotions, she needs to suppress those so she can be the Mockingjay and like the head of the rebel.
Like she's their mascot.
She's the mascot. And so then the 2 last books are focusing on her like degeneration into not insanity, but starting to see more of Hamish's characters coming out in her.
Mm-hmm. One thing I thought the movie did well, kind of over the book, was the book you feel more like a sense of being like trapped and there's nowhere to go. But like she can't get out of it, right? Like she can't escape the games like in the beginning. So the book did that better than the movie. But then I found in the movie when she was like going through the woods, you kind of got more of a sense of like you have no idea almost what's going to happen. Like there could be somebody hiding behind that tree and you don't know. Whereas reading the book, it was like you got less of that sense. So I think in some ways the medium change did good things and bad things, but nothing major.
Well, if you're going to change mediums, you're always going to lose something and gain something else.
But yeah, I mean, what they gained and what they lost was pretty much equal, so I have no complaints about that at all. But anyways, I think we should wrap up because it's probably almost 4 in the morning.
All in all, I liked it. It got better as it went along.
I think the costumes were well done. I think... Well, they could have given more shots of the city, so I can't exactly say that was well done.
They were like, the capital, it looks so big.
And then you never see it again.
And you see, like, it, and I'm like, it's big, but not that big.
Yeah. So, I mean, we didn't get a lot of shots of the city, so that didn't really set things up exactly well there, but that's okay. You got a really great sense of the games. So I think the best part that summed up the entire games was just the very beginning, Katniss going into the tube and being shot up, and then that shot of all of standing around the cornucopia and the countdown, and then just like the mass slaughter that happens right after that. And the fact that you saw it, but you didn't see it. And how, like I said, that I would say the camera, they used the whole shaky cam to cover up their gore so they could probably get a lower like rating. Which is genius, I have to say. Because you're not showing the gore, but you're implying it. You know exactly what's going on. It's like you're with someone who's running around trying to deal with everything, and at any moment you could be taken down, so you're brought into the games. Wouldn't it have been sick and twisted if you have like the cameraman fall?
Oh man, that would have been too much.
So you don't actually see anything, you just kind of see the shot of the ground.
Like feet and full of Blair Witch Project.
Yeah! That would have been traumatizing.
I'd just be sitting there with you, not again, not again, not again, not again.
Oh, yeah, that would have been twisted. I kind of pictured the cornucopia in my head, I don't know why, as like almost like the yellow brick road.
Yeah, I thought it was smaller because when I was reading it, I saw it almost like a statue that, like 3 people could stand around.
Well,
so,
I mean, they're climbing it to get
their arms, and then, so I saw it higher, and, like, this cornucopia with all the stuff kind of following out, so when, they're trying to scramble up, it's harder to get up, and then there's the 3 of them, and they're more condensed, like, it's smaller, so there's less ground on top of it, so their fighting is a lot more intense. And, like, the cornucopia, It was huge.
Yeah, I'm not so much. I don't know why in my head I just pictured kind of like this spiraling yellow brick road going round and round into the cornucopia, and I guess that's kind of sick and twisted to associate the Wizard of Oz with this, but I did, and that was.
Well, then again, the cornucopia is kind of the use of a cornucopia is kind of twisted.
Oh yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah, but it's not a far stretch. But anyways, okay, wrap it up.
Okay, so. If you liked the books, go and see the movie. You will like it. You will have your problems with it, but you're always going to have a problem with an adaptation. It's
okay. And you know what? I just look at just think of it as, did they do the best they could with what they could do? And that's how I kind of came out looking at it, and my answer is yeah, they did.
If you haven't read the books, you're gonna. It's not difficult to follow.
No, not at all.
You won't be confused. You'll
probably there's one or two things you might get, but they're not essential.
Yeah.
So, we recommend you go see it. It's definitely worth it.
Definitely.
All right.
Well, we're off to bed.
See you in our next review.